There's a certain kind of magic reserved for childhood. It's a fleeting golden hour of life where the world seems impossibly big and full of endless promise. For those of us who grew up in a certain era, the late 70s, the early 80s, that magic was often beamed directly into our living rooms through the television set. It was a time of innocence, or at least a time that desperately wanted to believe in it. And the keepers of that innocence were often children themselves, the child actors, who lit up our screens with their precocious talent and irresistible charm. In 1982, one of the brightest of all these young stars was a little girl named Bridgette Andersen. To the millions who saw her in the beloved family film Savannah Smiles, she was more than just an actress. She was the perfect embodiment of childhood joy. With a genius-level IQ and a natural charisma that was nothing short of breathtaking, she seemed destined for a future as luminous as her on-screen smile. She was America's runaway sweetheart, the little girl who could melt the hearts of two hardened crooks and an entire audience along with them. Her story felt like a real-life fairy tale. But the machinery of Hollywood, which manufactures our fairy tales, is also brutally efficient at shattering them. The story of Bridgette Andersen doesn't end with a happy fade-out. It continues long after the camera stopped rolling, descending into the shadows that lie just beyond the spotlight's glare. It's a deeply human story about the crushing weight of early promise, the desperate search for identity when the world has already decided who you are, and the devastating quiet that follows when the applause dies down. This is not just another story of a tragic child star. It's a heartbreaking exploration of a brilliant light that was asked to shine too brightly, too soon, in the darkness that ultimately consumed it. This is the beautiful, brilliant, and devastating life of Bridgette Andersen. To truly understand the trajectory of Bridgette's life, we have to travel back to her beginning, to a time and place that was itself a paradox of sunshine and intense pressure. She was born Bridgette Leanne Andersen on July 11, 1975, in Inglewood, California. Her parents, Frank and Teresa Andersen, were not part of the Hollywood machine. They were an ordinary family who soon moved to the decidedly extraordinary enclave of Malibu, a community known as much for its celebrity residents as its stunning coastline. From her very earliest days, it was profoundly clear that Bridgette was different. This wasn't the wishful thinking of doting parents. It was an undeniable, almost startling fact. While other children her age were learning to speak in simple phrases, Bridgette was absorbing the world around her at an accelerated rate. The most famous story, the one that has become the cornerstone of her legend, is that by the tender age of 2, she was already reading, not just recognizing words, but reading fluently with comprehension. The anecdote that launched her career sounds like a scene from a movie itself. The Andersen family was out for a meal. Little Bridgette, perched in her high chair, grew bored. She picked up the restaurant menu and, to the utter astonishment of her parents and everyone within earshot, began to read it aloud, from top to bottom, navigating complex words with an ease that was simply unheard of. It was at this moment that a talent agent seated at a nearby table recognized that he was witnessing something far beyond mere precociousness. This was genius. He approached the family, a stranger delivering a prophecy that would alter the course of their lives forever. "You have a star on your hands." Frank and Teresa were understandably hesitant. The world of child acting was notoriously fraught with peril. They were not stage parents, hungry for vicarious fame. Their primary concern was their daughter's well-being, but Bridgette possessed a powerful, innate drive. She was not a passive child. She was endlessly curious, imaginative, and had a natural inclination towards performance. It wasn't something her parents pushed upon her. It was a light that shone from within her. Believing they should allow her to explore this remarkable gift, they agreed to let her try. Almost instantly, the industry confirmed the agent's prediction. Bridgette began booking commercials one after another. In the world of 30-second advertisements, her combination of cherubic looks, those enormous expressive blue eyes, and her ability to take complex direction made her a dream commodity. She was a professional in a pint-sized package. But this was just the prelude. A chance meeting was about to transform her from a successful commercial actress into the star of her own feature film, cementing her place in the pop culture landscape of the 1980s. The genesis of Savannah Smiles is a testament to Bridgette's singular power to inspire. Mark Miller, a veteran actor and writer, had a fledgling idea for a family film. It was a simple concept about a runaway child, but it lacked a heart. It remained just an idea on a piece of paper until the day he met Bridgette Andersen. He was so completely and utterly captivated by her during a brief introductory meeting that the entire story crystallized in his mind. The character he had been searching for was standing right in front of him. He didn't just want to cast her, he felt compelled to write the entire movie for her, to build a cinematic world around her unique spirit. He rushed home and channeled this inspiration into a screenplay. The story was simple, classic, and full of heart. Savannah, the 6-year-old daughter of a busy politician, feels neglected and decides to run away from her affluent home. In a twist of fate, she ends up hiding in the beat-up car of two well-meaning but bumbling convicts, Alvy and Boots, who are fresh off a prison break. Initially, the two men, played by Miller himself and the wonderfully comedic Donovan Scott, see the girl as their ticket to a hefty ransom. But Savannah, with her disarming intelligence and infectious charm, systematically dismantles their defenses. She doesn't just melt their hearts, she awakens their long, dormant paternal instincts, and they become the loving, attentive family she never had. The film was titled Savannah Smiles, a direct tribute to its young star. When filming commenced in the scenic landscapes of Salt Lake City, Utah, Bridgette was just 6 years old. It quickly became apparent to everyone on set that she was not just the lead actress. She was the film's guiding force. The cast and crew were in a constant state of awe at her abilities. Stories from that set have become legendary among those who were there. Donovan Scott, who played the lovable, gentle giant Boots, recalled how Bridgette, with her eidetic memory, had the entire script memorized. Not just her lines, but every single character's lines. He would be in his trailer preparing for a scene, and this tiny girl would walk in, sit down, and run lines with him flawlessly, playing all the parts, giving him his cues from memory alone. Her talent transcended mere mimicry. She possessed an intuitive grasp of emotional subtext that seasoned adult actors spend a lifetime trying to master. Mark Miller, the film's writer and star, shared a now famous story of a day when he was struggling with a particular scene. He couldn't find the right emotional note. He felt his performance was flat. Sensing his frustration, 6-year-old Bridgette walked over to him, took his hand, and with the gentle authority of a veteran director said, "Mark, you're not doing it right. You need to say the line with this feeling." She then delivered his line back to him with the perfect inflection, unlocking the scene's potential. Miller was dumbfounded. He later recounted, "It was like being directed by this tiny Orson Welles. She was just brilliant, a true prodigy." Released in 1982, Savannah Smiles was not a major box office behemoth. It was a modest, independent film that found its true home not in massive theater chains, but in the living rooms of families across America. Through the burgeoning world of cable television and home video rentals, it became a beloved cult classic, a treasured memory for a generation of kids. At its core, the film's enduring appeal came down to one thing: the absolute authenticity of its star. Bridgette Andersen's performance was a miracle of naturalism. She was funny, she was vulnerable, she was heartbreakingly real. The world had fallen in love with the little girl with the unforgettable smile. Her future seemed limitless, a blank page waiting to be filled with decades of brilliant work. In the immediate aftermath of Savannah Smiles, Bridgette Andersen became one of the most in-demand child performers in Hollywood. She was a fixture on 1980s television. She was cast to play the childhood version of the famously provocative starlet in the TV movie Mae West, a role that required her to project a sense of confidence far beyond her years. She became a familiar face to primetime audiences, with guest spots on all the quintessential shows of the decade: Fantasy Island, The Love Boat, Remington Steele, and Simon & Simon. She was a talk show regular, always impressing hosts like Johnny Carson with her sharp wit and disarming charm. In 1986, she landed a significant supporting role in Disney's made-for-television sequel, The Parent Trap 2, starring alongside the original film's star, Hayley Mills. Bridgette played Mary, the best friend of one of the main characters, once again embodying the spunky, intelligent sidekick role that she had perfected. For a few years, it seemed she was successfully navigating the treacherous waters of the child actor circuit, building a solid and consistent resume. But the industry has a cruel, unspoken rule. A child star's primary currency is their cuteness, their non-threatening, adorable nature. As the 1980s drew to a close, that currency began to devalue. Bridgette was growing up. The cherubic face was giving way to the more angular features of adolescence. The tiny girl was becoming a young woman, and the Hollywood machine, which had so eagerly embraced her, now seemed confused. The roles that had once been plentiful started to become scarce. The transition from child star to serious teenage actress is perhaps the most perilous journey in show business, and for Bridgette, it proved to be an impassable chasm. This is a story that has played out time and time again. The very skills that make a child actor successful, an ability to please adults, to take direction, to suppress their own impulses for the sake of a performance, can hinder the development of a robust, independent identity. For her entire formative life, Bridgette's sense of self-worth had been inextricably linked to her identity as Bridgette Andersen, the actress. When the acting roles dwindled, she was left to grapple with a terrifying existential question. If she wasn't that, who was she? Her family, by all accounts, worked hard to provide a stable foundation. They remained in Malibu, and Bridgette attended public school, an attempt to give her a semblance of a normal life. But there is nothing normal about being a former movie star, trying to navigate the social minefield of a typical American high school. She was an anomaly. She existed in a strange limbo, no longer a celebrity, but not just another student either. She faced a mixture of jealousy, awe, and outright exclusion. The girl whose intelligence had once been celebrated now found it made her an outsider. This profound sense of alienation, of not belonging anywhere, created a fertile ground for rebellion. She began a desperate search for an identity that Hollywood hadn't given her, one she would have to build for herself. The transformation was dramatic. The sunny, blonde-haired girl from Savannah Smiles began to systematically dismantle her public persona. She found her new identity in the burgeoning goth subculture of the late 1980s and early 90s. She dyed her hair black, wore dark, dramatic clothing, and immersed herself in the movement's melancholic music and literature. This wasn't just a fashion choice. It was an act of profound self-definition. It was a visceral rejection of the wholesome, good girl image that had been projected onto her for years. It was her way of screaming to the world that she was not Savannah. She was someone else entirely. This search for a new identity, however, led her down a much darker path. The crowd she fell in with was deeply enmeshed in the drug scene, and Bridgette, perhaps looking for acceptance, perhaps seeking an escape from the gnawing pain of her identity crisis, began to experiment. Her drug of choice became heroin, a substance that has seduced countless artists and lost souls with its false promise of warmth and oblivion. For a young woman whose mind was perhaps too brilliant, too sensitive for the world she found herself in, the drug may have offered a dangerous respite, a way to silence the relentless thoughts, to numb the feeling of being a disappointment, to escape the shadow of a past she could never live up to. Her relationship with her family, once the bedrock of her life, began to fracture under the immense strain. Frank and Teresa were terrified. They watched as their brilliant daughter slipped away from them, disappearing into a world they couldn't understand. They did what any loving parent would do. They tried to intervene. They begged her to get help, arranged for rehab, and pleaded with her to come home. But addiction weaves a powerful web of delusion and defiance. Bridgette, now a young adult, saw their concern as control. She fiercely guarded her newfound independence, even if it was leading her toward self-destruction. Eventually, the family ties snapped. She became estranged from them, choosing the chaotic camaraderie of her drug-using friends over the family that represented a life she felt she had failed at. The years that followed are a portrait of a slow, tragic fade into obscurity. The child prodigy was now just another young person lost in the wilderness of addiction. The final chapter of her professional life is perhaps the most poignant and heartbreaking detail of her entire story. To support herself, Bridgette Andersen took a job as a checkout clerk at an Erewhon, a natural food store in Los Angeles. Let that sink in. The irony is almost too cruel to bear. A young woman systematically destroying her body with poison was working in a temple dedicated to health and wellness. Customers, focused on their organic kale and gluten-free bread, would have had no idea that the quiet, withdrawn young woman scanning their groceries was once the star of a beloved film. She was a ghost hiding in plain sight, a secret celebrity in exile. It's a detail that speaks volumes about the brutal, unsentimental nature of fame. One moment, you are a celebrated icon. The next, you are completely anonymous, your luminous past a secret kept behind tired eyes. By May of 1997, Bridgette was 21 years old, teetering on the precipice. Her life had been consumed by her addiction. On a Saturday, inside a Los Angeles convenience store, surrounded by friends, she took a fatal combination of heroin and alcohol. The overdose was swift and catastrophic. In a panic, fearing legal repercussions, her companions failed to call for help immediately. Those lost minutes would prove to be the difference between life and death. When paramedics finally arrived, they found her unresponsive. They rushed her to a nearby hospital, where she was immediately placed on life support. Her parents, Frank and Teresa, were contacted and raced to her side. After years of painful estrangement, they were reunited with their daughter in the sterile, beeping nightmare of an intensive care unit. All they could do was watch, utterly helpless, as the child they had brought into the world, the girl whose brilliance had once astonished them, lay perfectly still, kept alive only by the rhythmic pulse and whir of machines. For 2 agonizing days, they clung to a desperate, fading hope. But the doctors delivered the final, irreversible verdict. The overdose had starved her brain of oxygen for too long. There was no activity, no consciousness, no hope of recovery. Their daughter was gone. On May 18, 1997, the Andersen family had to make the most unimaginable decision a parent can face. They agreed to remove their child from life support. Bridgette Andersen, the little girl with the 1,000-watt smile, died. She was 21 years old. Her passing did not create a media firestorm. There were no breaking news alerts, no televised retrospectives. For the world at large, her name was a faint echo from a bygone era, a piece of 80s pop culture trivia. Her death was a quiet, tragic postscript to a story most people thought had ended long ago. And yet this very quietness is what makes her story so profoundly significant and disturbing. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our relationship with childhood fame. It is far too simplistic to lay the blame at the feet of her parents. By every available account, the Andersens were a loving family who were thrust into an extraordinary world with no map. They were not the greedy, exploitative stage parents of Hollywood cliché. The real controversy lies with the industry itself, a system that is expert at identifying and monetizing childhood talent, but has no infrastructure or ethical concern for the long-term psychological well-being of these children. The industry puts children in high-pressure adult environments. It conditions them to believe their worth is tied to their last performance. Then when puberty hits and they are no longer cute, it often discards them, leaving them to navigate the wreckage of a life lived in reverse. For every Drew Barrymore who survives the inferno, there are countless Bridgette Andersens, Dana Platos, and Anissa Joneses who are consumed by it. Mark Miller, the man who saw a universe of promise in her 6-year-old eyes, was shattered by her death. He always maintained that her immense intelligence was both a gift and a profound burden. He believed she felt things too deeply, that she was too sensitive and perceptive for the often cruel and superficial world she inhabited. He famously said she was too bright for this world. Her story is a devastating cautionary tale. It's a testament to the fact that child stars are not products to be consumed and discarded. They are children, first and foremost, and the psychological toll of growing up under the public microscope is a debt that many spend the rest of their short lives trying to repay. Bridgette Andersen is the face of the forgotten casualties of this system. What then is the enduring legacy of Bridgette Andersen? For a generation, she will forever be Savannah, a perfect icon of lost innocence, frozen in time by the magic of cinema. The film she starred in remains a beautiful testament to a talent that was pure, undeniable, and truly once in a lifetime. But her full story demands more from us. It demands that we look past the smiling facade and acknowledge the profound human tragedy. Her life is a powerful argument for greater compassion, stronger protections, and a fundamental reevaluation of our cultural obsession with childhood fame. It serves as a haunting reminder of the immense, often unseen human cost of the entertainment we so casually consume. Ultimately, the deepest tragedy is the loss of potential. The world was robbed of the woman that brilliant, sensitive little girl was meant to become. What would she have done with that extraordinary mind? Would she have found peace? Would she have returned to her art as a writer or director? Would she have found a life of quiet fulfillment far away from the industry that both made and broke her? These are the questions that hang in the air, unanswered. The what if is the ghost that haunts her story. The best way to honor her memory is to hold both truths at once, to celebrate the radiant joy she brought to the world for a brief shining moment, and to mourn the deep private pain that led to her tragic end. She was so much more than the little girl in that movie. Her name was Bridgette, and her brilliant, beautiful, and heartbreaking story is one we should never forget. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.